Hello everyone, how y'all doing? So today's gonna be a bit of a quicker video because there's not really a lot for me to add in regards to this. It's just generally good news. So very recently, one of the engineers from Valve, I believe, ended up coming up with some patches that actually seem to be improving the VRAM utilization for certain games. Basically, the solution that he came up with is one that essentially allows for the overall OS to allocate more VRAM into the actual game. And it's not just patches. I think there's also some like packages that you have to install, like these ones that seem to be mainly KDE packages. And I have seen some benchmarks. Let me see if I have a here. All right, this is the video. So this guy here did end up doing some benchmarks. I will say though that he was using the RX 6500 XT. This is the one that, yeah, that's the one that has 4 GB of VRAM, and he was also testing this with like 1080p low. And I think this is an I think this is a good test to make. Like for example, here is a very good example of these patches actually working to its benefits. Like it's a difference between 15 FPS to 40. That's a pretty big jump. But if you look at other games, like for example, this one, Cyberpunk 2077, I'm fairly certain the frame rate is like about the same. 49 average. Uh, if you look at The Last of Us, it's actually getting lower frame rates, though this could just be margin of error, for being honest. And then the other one, I think was exact was Spider-Man 2. As you can see here, about the same, like, yeah, 2 frames, I guess, but like it's about the same frame rate. And so not every game here is going to necessarily benefit, but I also do think that some of it could also just be, like depending on which settings you're running, like how much of your VRAM is gonna actually hog. So that is also something you need to consider. Like a part of me was wondering, like I would like to see a test of, for example, someone who's using I'm thinking of an 8 gig, like for example the 9060, the 9060 XT, the RX 9060 XT with 8 GB of VRAM, and then also testing some of the latest games, especially 9th gen exclusive games. And I don't know, maybe abuse the ray tracing just a little bit to see how much of these patches actually benefit, because I feel like that would be, because here again, like these settings here might be toning down the VRAM requirements a little bit, so it may not be able to show you the full extent. I mean, I think we've already seen what this can achieve even from here. Like this is impressive, but I am wondering, like those scenarios that I described, like you're using a 9060 XT, which is a GPU that has a fair amount of compute power. It's really just the VRAM that's the main issue. More specifically, the 8 GB version. I actually do have the 16 GB one, but like if you have the 8 GB one and you test in like certain scenarios where VRAM would be very useful to have, I'm wondering like how much of this would actually benefit. And I have to assume it's probably a lot. And I'd be very curious, if I'm being honest. Now, one other thing is, in this article, I think they mentioned that you needed to have the kernel 7.0 that I don't think is officially released yet. I think this is mainly if actually I think CatchOS did release version 6.19 that actually does come included with these patches. And so the reason why I'm saying this is because like because the thing, this is obviously going to benefit the SteamOS more so than anything, specifically the Steam machine that does actually have 8 GB of VRAM. But at the same time, I do wonder, like oftentimes SteamOS does not have the latest kernels. They never do. And so I do wonder, how long it would take before they gain access to these patches. I guess in theory, maybe they could just end up applying these patches to whatever older version they have, which I think right now it might be 6 point something. I don't even think it's in the 6.10s yet, at least the last time I checked. It might have changed since then. Yeah, like, from what I'm seeing here, it does seem like this is requiring like very bleeding edge stuff. And so SteamOS not being very bleeding edge does make me believe that like maybe it might not have access to a lot of this tech yet. Though then again, we don't really know when the Steam machine is gonna come out, because It was supposed to be coming out around this time, I think, but obviously because of the RAM situation, like Valve essentially had to reevaluate their schedules. I'm fairly certain that by this point we should have already known what the price is and what the release date is, and maybe even already released. But with the VRAM situation, I'm sure they have to reconsider a lot of stuff, which it's a bit of a shame, but it is what it is. That's just the current market situation that we're in right now. I have heard no, not rumors. I have heard like people saying that like apparently the whole RAM market, the whole RAM apocalypse thing is starting to kind of crash, and like prices are kind of starting to stabilize. But to be honest with you, I'd still say that it's probably only until 2027 that we're actually gonna see prices maybe not as good as it was at the beginning of last year, but maybe a little bit closer to how it used to be back in the 2022 to 2024. Somewhat, even 2024 the prices were actually pretty good back then. I don't even know if it's going to get to that point, but like yeah, I think it's only by 2027 we're going to see prices become a little bit more reasonable, because I don't think demand for RAM has really stopped. It's not going to stop for a while. But anyway, the other thing is, this is the one thing that's a little bit messy, which is a lot of these patches are mainly going to benefit AMD and Intel GPUs. With NVIDIA, only if you're using the Nouveau drivers, which, I mean, like, I don't think you should be using these drivers. The proprietary ones, they don't seem to be able to take advantage of these patches, because apparently it does not support D memory and CG and C groups. So maybe the NVK driver, but even then, the NVK is more of like a Vulkan driver. I guess technically, like the thing is, I don't have an Nvidia card, so I wouldn't be able to know. But a part of me does wonder, like, if someone were to use the Nouveau for the graphics driver and then use NVK for the Vulkan driver, would they be able to get a good experience? I don't know. Do any of you Nvidia users be able to tell me if that's the case or not? Because my overall impressions on Nouveau are based on pre-NVK, when you had to use the Nouveau driver stack, which generally speaking your performance would get extremely gimped. But in this new era of NVK, I don't know, maybe Nouveau might be a bit more viable as just solely a graphics driver, while you use like the NVK Vulkan driver for gaming. So I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. I'd be very curious to know how the experience is. But yeah, anyway, I'm very curious to see how this goes, and yeah, stay safe.